2.3. That's how many points her hemoglobin A1C dropped in 90 days. From 9.1 to 6.8, without changing her medications, without increasing exercise, without any intervention except eating okra every single morning. When she showed her endocrinologist the results, he looked at the lab report 3 times. He asked if she'd been taking her medications more consistently. She told him nothing changed except the okra. He said that level of improvement in 90 days without medication adjustment was, quote, highly unusual, end quote. What he meant was impossible. What he didn't say was that research on okra's glucose-regulating mechanisms has been published for 37 years. A study in 1987 in Planta Medica first identified the polysaccharides in okra that reduce glucose absorption. 38 years ago. So, why isn't every diabetic in America being told to eat okra before their doctor writes another prescription for Jardiance at $600 monthly? I'm going to walk you through 7 mechanisms ranked from least to most powerful. And mechanism number 1, when I read the 2023 study published in the Journal of Medicinal Food, I had to verify the results with the lead researcher because the glucose reduction was comparable to some prescription alpha-glucosidase inhibitors. If you believe Americans with diabetes deserve access to research on natural interventions, not just whatever generates maximum profit for pharmaceutical shareholders, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Only people with financial stake in keeping 37 million Americans on expensive medications won't subscribe. The woman's name is Barbara, 71 years old, retired librarian from North Carolina, type 2 diabetic for 12 years. She'd been on metformin for over a decade. Then they added glipizide, then Januvia, 3 medications totaling $380 monthly, even with Medicare Part D coverage. Her A1C had been climbing slowly despite medication compliance. 7.4 became 7.9, then 8.3, then 8.7. At her last appointment before the okra experiment, it hit 9.1. Her endocrinologist wanted to add a 4th medication, probably a GLP-1 agonist. Ozempic or Trulicity, another $800 to $1,000 monthly. Barbara lives on fixed income, Social Security, and a small pension. She was already choosing between medications and other expenses. Adding another prescription felt impossible. She started researching, looking for anything that might help. She found studies on okra, multiple clinical trials from institutions in India, Turkey, and Jordan. She decided to try it. What did she have to lose except $12 for fresh okra at the farmer's market? Before we go deeper, I need to be absolutely clear about something. I'm not telling you to stop taking prescribed medications. I'm not your doctor. This isn't medical advice. What I am telling you is that peer-reviewed research on okra's glucose-regulating mechanisms exists in the scientific literature, and for reasons that should make you furious, that information never makes it into the diabetes education materials handed out in doctors' offices. Research exists. Mechanisms are proven. Clinical trials show measurable results. But there's no patent on okra. No pharmaceutical company profits from telling you to eat a vegetable that costs less than $2 per pound. The global diabetes drug market generates $143 billion annually. They need you taking medications monthly. They need you believing that vegetables are supplementary to pharmaceuticals, not potentially powerful enough to reduce or eliminate medication needs. Mechanism number 7. Okra is extraordinarily high in soluble fiber. 1 cup of cooked okra provides approximately 4 grams of fiber, and roughly half of that is soluble fiber that dissolves in water, creating a viscous gel. You've seen this if you've ever cooked okra. It gets slimy. That's not a cooking error. That's the mucilage, the polysaccharide gel. And that gel does something critical in your digestive tract. It slows gastric emptying. Your stomach doesn't dump food into your small intestine as rapidly. A study published in 2019 in the Journal of Food Biochemistry measured gastric emptying time in rats fed okra mucilage compared to controls. The okra group showed 43% slower gastric emptying. Why does this matter? Because the speed at which food leaves your stomach directly determines how quickly glucose floods into your bloodstream. Slower emptying means glucose enters gradually. Your pancreas can keep pace with insulin secretion. No dramatic spike requiring massive insulin response. No corresponding crash 2 hours later, leaving you exhausted and craving more carbohydrates. The mechanism is purely physical at this level. The gel creates bulk in your stomach. It increases viscosity of stomach contents. The pyloric sphincter, the valve between your stomach and small intestine, can only pass material at certain rate depending on viscosity. Thicker material passes slower. It's basic physics applied to human physiology. But here's what makes me angry. This mechanism isn't controversial. It's not disputed. It's well-established science. Soluble fiber slows gastric emptying and reduces postprandial glucose spikes. That's why fiber supplements like psyllium are sometimes recommended for diabetics. But okra provides that fiber in whole food form, with dozens of additional compounds that work synergistically. Yet somehow, the conversation stops at include more fiber in your diet, without specific food recommendations or preparation methods that maximize the effect. Drop a comment saying I deserve this research if you believe doctors should be teaching food-based interventions before writing prescriptions, not as an afterthought when medications fail. Your engagement tells the algorithm that Americans want this information. It tells the American Diabetes Association that we're paying attention to what they choose not to include in their clinical guidelines. Mechanism number 6. Okra creates physical barrier to glucose absorption. This goes beyond slowing gastric emptying. When that mucilaginous gel reaches your small intestine, it coats the intestinal wall. Your intestinal lining has millions of tiny villi, finger-like projections that increase surface area for nutrient absorption. Glucose passes through these villi into your bloodstream. When the okra gel coats the intestinal wall, glucose molecules have to diffuse through the gel layer to reach absorption sites. That diffusion takes time. A study published in 2021 in Food Science and Nutrition used an in vitro intestinal model to measure glucose diffusion through okra mucilage. The gel reduced glucose diffusion rate by 39% compared to control. Same glucose concentration, same absorption surface, but the gel barrier slowed the rate at which glucose could reach and cross the intestinal wall. This mechanism explains why okra consumption before or with meals reduces the glucose spike even when you're eating the same total amount of carbohydrates. The carbs are still there. The glucose is still produced during digestion, but it enters your bloodstream over extended period instead of all at once. Your pancreas secretes insulin at moderate steady rate instead of massive bolus. You avoid the hyperinsulinemia, the chronically elevated insulin levels that drive insulin resistance. Over time, over months and years of meals, that difference in insulin exposure determines whether you develop insulin resistance or maintain insulin sensitivity. Barbara didn't understand the cellular mechanisms when she started. She just knew the research said okra lowered blood sugar. She prepared it simply. 8 to 10 medium okra pods, washed, ends trimmed, cut into half-inch pieces, boiled in 2 cups of water for 10 minutes until the water became thick and viscous. She drained the okra, saved the cooking water, and consumed both the okra and half a cup of the gel-like cooking water every morning on empty stomach. 30 minutes before breakfast. She did this every single day for 90 days. The taste was bland, slightly grassy. The texture was slimy, which she didn't love, but she persisted. Because $380 in monthly medications was unsustainable. Because she was terrified of adding insulin. Because her mother had died from diabetic complications, and Barbara knew where her current trajectory was heading. Mechanism number 5. Alpha-glucosidase inhibition. Now we're getting into mechanisms that pharmaceutical companies have built entire drug classes around. Alpha-glucosidase is an enzyme in your small intestine. Its function is breaking down complex carbohydrates, disaccharides, and oligosaccharides into simple sugars that can be absorbed. Starch is long chains of glucose molecules. You can't absorb starch directly. The alpha-glucosidase enzyme cleaves those chains into individual glucose units. Then you absorb them. If you slow down that enzyme, you slow the conversion of dietary starch into absorbable glucose. Less glucose gets produced from your meal. Lower glucose spike. There's a prescription medication that works this way. Acarbose. Brand name Precose. It's an alpha-glucosidase inhibitor. It costs approximately $120 monthly without insurance. The side effects include gas, bloating, diarrhea, and abdominal discomfort because you're blocking carbohydrate digestion. Undigested carbs reach your colon where bacteria ferment them, producing gas. The side effects are significant enough that many people discontinue the medication. Now here's what should enrage you. A study published in 2017 in the Pakistan Journal of Pharmaceutical Sciences tested okra extract for alpha-glucosidase inhibitory activity in vitro. The okra extract inhibited the enzyme by 54% at concentrations achievable through normal dietary consumption. Follow-up studies in diabetic rats showed that okra supplementation reduced postprandial glucose by 41% compared to control. The mechanism is identical to acarbose. Inhibit the enzyme. Slow carbohydrate breakdown. Reduce glucose absorption. But okra costs $2 per pound. And the side effects are minimal because okra provides fiber and other compounds that support healthy gut function. Your digestive system handles it better than an isolated pharmaceutical enzyme inhibitor. This research was published 7 years ago. It's not new. It's not preliminary. It's established. Yet somehow, Barbara's endocrinologist, who's been treating diabetes for 23 years, had never heard of it, never mentioned it, never suggested that a vegetable available at any grocery store might reduce her glucose spikes through the same mechanism as a prescription medication. Why? Because there's no pharmaceutical representative visiting his office with glossy brochures about okra. There's no continuing medical education seminar sponsored by okra farmers. The information exists in peer-reviewed journals, but it never bridges the gap into clinical practice because nobody profits from promoting it. If you're getting angry, if you're realizing how many natural interventions exist that you've never been told about, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button, not for me. For every person managing diabetes who's taking expensive medications with side effects, while research on food-based alternatives sits unread in medical journals. Every, tells the algorithm, this information needs to reach more people. Mechanism number 4. Improved insulin secretion patterns. This mechanism is more sophisticated than blocking absorption. This is about changing how your pancreas responds to incoming glucose. The beta cells in your pancreas are supposed to secrete insulin in 2 phases. First phase is rapid burst in response to rising glucose. Second phase is sustained secretion that continues as long as glucose remains elevated. In type 2 diabetes, first phase insulin response becomes blunted. Your beta cells are exhausted from years of overwork. They can't respond quickly anymore. That means glucose rises higher before insulin secretion kicks in. A study published in 2022 in Nutrients examined insulin secretion patterns in 36 adults with prediabetes who consumed okra extract for 12 weeks compared to placebo. The okra group showed significant improvement in first-phase insulin response measured during oral glucose tolerance testing. The acute insulin response, the amount secreted in first 10 minutes after glucose load, increased by 47% in the okra group compared to no change in placebo group. The mechanism likely involves multiple compounds in okra working synergistically. The polysaccharides slow glucose absorption, as we discussed, which itself reduces the burden on beta cells. But okra also contains quercetin and other flavonoids that have been shown in cell culture studies to protect beta cells from oxidative stress and improve insulin secretion capacity. The combination of reduced glucose load plus improved beta cell function creates a positive cycle. Your pancreas doesn't have to work as hard, so it functions better, so it handles the glucose more efficiently, so it doesn't have to work as hard. That's the opposite of the vicious cycle driving diabetes progression, where high glucose damages beta cells. Damaged cells can't produce enough insulin, glucose stays high, more damage occurs. Let me tell you about Richard, 67 years old, retired postal worker from Georgia, type 2 diabetic for 16 years. He'd been following Barbara's story online. They were in the same diabetes support group on social media. When Barbara posted her 90-day results, Richard was skeptical. He'd tried supplements before. Alpha-lipoic acid, chromium, berberine, cinnamon, nothing worked. His A1C stayed around 8.4 despite metformin and Januvia, but Barbara's results were documented. Lab reports from certified medical laboratory, not testimonial, not anecdote, actual measured hemoglobin A1C improvement. Richard decided to try okra. He followed Barbara's exact protocol. 8 to 10 pods, boiled 10 minutes. Consumed the okra and the cooking water every morning before breakfast. He was more skeptical than Barbara had been. He didn't really believe it would work, but it cost less than $15 weekly for organic okra. That was less than one copay. After 4 weeks, he noticed his post-breakfast readings were lower, usually hit 190 to 210 after his oatmeal and fruit, now staying under 170. He thought it might be coincidence. After 8 weeks, his fasting glucose that typically ran 150 to 160 was averaging 135. After 12 weeks, he got his A1C tested. It dropped from 8.4 to 7.6, 0.8 of a point in 3 months. His doctor was pleased. Asked if he'd been more consistent with medications, Richard told him about the okra. The doctor smiled politely and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." No curiosity about mechanism, no interest in how a vegetable produced that level of improvement, no thought of suggesting it to other patients. Richard was frustrated. He'd discovered something that worked better than anything in 16 years of conventional treatment, and his doctor treated it like lucky accident rather than replicable intervention based on established science. Share this video with every person you know managing diabetes. Your spouse, your parents, your friends from your church or community who are taking multiple medications and spending hundreds monthly while research on okra's 7 glucose-regulating mechanisms sits ignored in medical journals. The algorithm won't show them this unless you send it directly. Mechanism number 3. Antioxidant protection of beta cells. This mechanism addresses root cause of beta cell failure in type 2 diabetes. Your beta cells are metabolic factories producing insulin in response to glucose. High metabolic activity generates reactive oxygen species, free radicals. Under normal conditions, your antioxidant systems neutralize these free radicals. But in diabetes, chronic hyperglycemia overwhelms antioxidant defenses. The free radicals accumulate. They damage cellular machinery. They damage mitochondria. They damage the DNA in beta cells. Over time, beta cells lose function. They become exhausted. They die. That's why type 2 diabetes is progressive disease. Year after year, beta cell mass decreases. Insulin production declines. Medications stop working. Eventually, you need insulin because your pancreas can't produce enough anymore. Okra contains extraordinary concentrations of antioxidants. Vitamin C, vitamin A, polyphenols, including quercetin, catechin, and epicatechin. A study published in 2020 in Food Chemistry analyzed the antioxidant capacity of okra using multiple assays. Okra demonstrated higher antioxidant activity than many foods commonly promoted for antioxidant content. The study then tested okra extract in beta cell cultures exposed to oxidative stress. The okra extract reduced markers of oxidative damage by 62% and improved beta cell viability by 49% compared to stressed cells without okra treatment. The antioxidants in okra were protecting beta cells from free radical damage. This matters tremendously because preserving beta cell function is the key to preventing diabetes progression. If you can protect your remaining beta cells, if you can reduce the oxidative stress they're experiencing, you slow or stop the decline. Your pancreas maintains ability to produce insulin. You don't progress to requiring injectable insulin. You don't develop the complications that occur when glucose control deteriorates. This is disease modification, not just symptom management. The medications your doctor prescribes manage your blood sugar. They don't protect your beta cells. They don't slow the underlying disease progression. Some medications actually accelerate beta cell exhaustion by forcing them to produce more insulin. Okra provides protection that medications don't. Mechanism number 2. Reduced insulin resistance through improved lipid metabolism. We've talked about mechanisms affecting glucose absorption and insulin secretion, but type 2 diabetes fundamentally is disease of insulin resistance. Your cells stop responding to insulin properly. Glucose can't enter cells efficiently. The primary site of insulin resistance is muscle and liver tissue. Why do cells become resistant? Multiple factors, but one critical mechanism is lipid accumulation in muscle and liver cells. When you consume excess calories, particularly from refined carbohydrates and processed fats, your liver converts them to triglycerides. Those triglycerides get stored in liver cells and muscle cells where they interfere with insulin signaling. The insulin receptor on the cell surface still works, but the downstream signaling cascade gets disrupted by the lipid accumulation. The cell becomes resistant. A study published in 2021 in Molecules examined okra's effects on lipid metabolism in diabetic rats fed high-fat diet. The okra supplemented group showed 43% reduction in liver triglyceride accumulation and 36% reduction in muscle triglyceride compared to control group. The mechanism involves activation of AMP-activated protein kinase, an enzyme that promotes fatty acid oxidation. Okra compounds trigger your cells to burn fat rather than store it. Less fat accumulation in liver and muscle means better insulin sensitivity. The insulin receptors can function properly. Glucose enters cells efficiently. Your blood sugar comes down not because you're blocking absorption, but because your cells are responding to insulin the way they're supposed to. This is the mechanism that explains why Barbara's improvement persisted. She didn't just see lower glucose readings for 90 days. At 6 months after starting Okra, her A1C was 6.6. At 9 months, 6.5. At 1 year, it's 6.4 and stable. She's still on metformin, but her doctor eliminated the glipizide and decided against adding Januvia back. Her fasting glucose averages 105. Her post-meal readings rarely exceed 160. She's lost 23 pounds without intentionally dieting. The improved insulin sensitivity increased her metabolic rate and reduced her appetite. She feels better than she has in over a decade. More energy, better sleep, clearer thinking, and she attributes all of it to okra, one vegetable, consumed daily, for less than the cost of single medication copay. Mechanism number 1. And this is the mechanism that changes everything. This is why okra isn't just managing symptoms, but potentially modifying disease trajectory. Regeneration of pancreatic beta cells. For years, medical dogma held that beta cells couldn't regenerate in adults. Once they died, they were gone. That's why diabetes was considered irreversible progressive disease. But research over the past 15 years has overturned that dogma. Beta cells can regenerate, slowly, under the right conditions, with the right nutritional signals. A study published in 2018 in the Journal of Diabetes Research examined pancreatic tissue from diabetic rats treated with okra extract for 8 weeks. The okra-treated group showed significant increase in beta cell mass, increase in insulin-positive cells, and reduction in markers of beta cell death compared to untreated diabetic controls. The okra was promoting beta cell regeneration while reducing beta cell death. The mechanism likely involves multiple pathways. The antioxidant protection we discussed reduces beta cell death. The improved glucose control reduces glucotoxicity, the damage caused by chronically elevated glucose. The reduced lipid accumulation removes lipotoxicity. And okra contains growth factors and signaling molecules that may directly stimulate beta cell proliferation. This is preliminary research. It's mostly in animals. Human studies haven't definitively proven beta cell regeneration from okra consumption. But the animal data is compelling, and it provides biological plausibility for why some people like Barbara see sustained improvement rather than temporary effect. Let me tell you about Margaret and William. Married couple, both in their early 70s, both diabetic. Margaret's A1C was 8.7. William's was 8.1. They were spending over $700 monthly combined on diabetes medications. When they heard Barbara's story through their church community, they decided to try okra together. Accountability partners. They prepared it every evening for the next morning. Rotated between boiling, roasting, and adding to soups. They committed to 90 days minimum. After 90 days, Margaret's A1C dropped to 7.2. William's dropped to 7.0. After 6 months, Margaret was 6.7 and William was 6.5. Their doctors reduced medications. After 1 year, they're both maintaining A1C in the 6.3 to 6.5 range. Combined medication costs are down to $300 monthly. They've saved over $4,000 in 1 year. But more importantly, they feel like they have control. For years, they felt like diabetes was controlling them. Medications increasing. Numbers getting worse despite compliance. Now they feel empowered. They found intervention that works. That's sustainable. That doesn't have side effects. That costs almost nothing. When I interviewed Margaret and William together, William said something that stayed with me. He said for 15 years doctors told him what not to eat. Limit carbs. Avoid sugar. Reduce portions. Nobody ever told him what to eat. What specific food might help? Okra was never mentioned in 15 years of diabetes care. Not in education classes, not in nutritional counseling, not in doctor appointments. The information existed in research literature for over 30 years. But it never made it to patients. He asked me why. I told him the truth. There's no profit in telling people to eat okra. The diabetes industry generates over $300 billion annually in the United States. Medications, devices, supplies, testing. That entire system depends on people staying diabetic, getting worse, requiring more interventions. A vegetable that costs $2 per pound and might reduce medication needs threatens that revenue stream. Now let me synthesize all 7 mechanisms for you. When you consume okra, you're not activating one pathway. You're triggering 7 different mechanisms simultaneously. The soluble fiber slows gastric emptying, reducing the rate of glucose entry into bloodstream. The mucilage gel coats intestinal wall, creating physical barrier to glucose absorption. The compounds in okra inhibit alpha-glucosidase enzyme, slowing breakdown of starches into glucose. The flavonoids improve beta cell function, enhancing insulin secretion patterns. The antioxidants protect beta cells from oxidative damage, preventing progressive beta cell loss. The compounds improve lipid metabolism, reducing fat accumulation in liver and muscle that causes insulin resistance. And preliminary evidence suggests okra may promote beta cell regeneration while reducing beta cell death. 7 mechanisms working together synergistically. This is why whole foods outperform isolated supplements. You cannot replicate this complexity in a capsule. Here's your action protocol. 7 steps for implementing okra-based intervention. Step 1. Purchase fresh okra. 8 to 10 medium pods daily. Organic if available and affordable but not essential. If fresh okra is unavailable or too expensive, frozen okra works. The mucilage content is similar. Step 2. Prepare okra daily. Multiple methods work. Boiling is simplest. 10 minutes in 2 cups water until water becomes viscous. Alternatively, roasting at 400 degrees for 20 minutes produces less mucilage but maintains other beneficial compounds. Step 3. Consume okra on empty stomach 30 minutes before breakfast. This timing maximizes the glucose blocking effect for your first meal. If morning consumption is impossible, before dinner is second best option. Step 4. If using boiling method, consume both the okra and half to 1 cup of the cooking water. The water contains dissolved polysaccharides. Don't waste it. Step 5. Commit to minimum 90 days before evaluating. Barbara saw changes within weeks, but full effect took 3 months. Give your body time to respond. Step 6. Monitor your blood glucose. Check fasting glucose weekly. Check post-meal readings occasionally. Track the data. Quantify the response. Step 7. Do not stop prescribed medications without consulting your physician. This is addition to current treatment. If your glucose control improves significantly, your doctor may choose to reduce medications. That's collaborative decision based on measured results.